Okay, we're almost there. Mayor, we are recording. Thank you, sir.
Okay, welcome everyone for our third meeting of this evening. We've completed our work session earlier at 5 o'clock and our CDRA meeting at approximately 6:30. I appreciate everybody's patience and efficiency in getting through all the business we have. It's Tuesday, July 21st, 2020. It's just after 7 p.m. Apologize for being a couple minutes late, but we're trying to get all of our attendees on, including our panelists. This is City of Cottonwood Heights once again, and this is our business meeting. And let me begin by reading a required determination statement, which allows us to meet remotely the way we're doing it. And the statement states, pursuant to Utah Code Annotated 52-4-207-4, the city's mayor, as the chair of the city council and as the board of the Cottonwood Heights Community Development and Renewal Agency, hereby determines that conducting the meetings on this date of the city council and of the board at an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location. The World Health Organization, the President of the United States, the Governor of Utah, the Stojack County Mayor and Health Department have all recognized that a global pandemic exists related to the new strain of the coronavirus SARS-CoV-2. Due to the state of emergency caused by the global pandemic, I find that conducting a meeting at the anchor location of the current state of public health emergency constitutes a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the location. According to the information from the state epidemiology experts, Utah is currently in an acceleration phase, which has the potential to overwhelm the state's healthcare system, and therefore this remote meeting. Thank you. Back to the agenda. Again, I want to emphasize that tonight's meeting has not just the city council staff, but we have right now at least 12 attendees at this meeting and hopefully many others listening online. We'll begin the meeting, and I would ask Scott Bracken, who looks like he's sitting in the council chambers, but he's really not, to lead us in a pledge of allegiance. Scott, would you do that for us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I know that's a little weird, but appreciate everybody's participation. Now, this will be a little bit unique for us since the moving online and the pandemic, but we're going to take public comment, and we're going to do it from attendees who have signed up. Before I do that, I want to turn over to Tim just for a moment, because we have some who have submitted written comments, but we've communicated back to them those will not be written into the public record, but will be attached to the record as a formal document, and we'll be sending out those written comments to each of you on the council as well. Tim, you want to kind of state how that works?
Yeah, so let me just say this is a new process that we're going through. We've benchmarked this off of what other communities are doing, and so we appreciate the patience of our residents and others who want to participate in this meeting. So as it states, and we've tried to have this outlined on our website and on the council agenda that was sent out, and I'll just read. It says, unlike in past council business meetings during the current pandemic, citizens now will be able to make live verbal comments during the citizen comment portion of this meeting through the city's recently acquired Zoom webinar process. Each citizen desiring to make citizen comment must register in advance for the webinar and the city council business meeting as follows. And then each registrant will receive a confirmation email containing information about joining the webinar and registrants who have entered the webinar's waiting room will be admitted to the webinar one at a time for purposes of making their citizen comments to the City Council. Citizen comments also may be given in writing by submitting the comments to the email of our city recorder by 5 p.m. on the meeting date. In the interest of time and those attending the meeting live, however, submitted written comments will be entered into the record, distributed to the mayor and city council, but will not be read at the public meeting. In addition to that, I will be admitting those records in. As I said, that I won't be reading those. I do want to outline the names of the individuals that submitted comments prior to 5 p.m. Anyone that submitted name or comments after 5 p.m., they will be forwarded to the city council as well after the meeting. The names of the individuals that submitted comments, just for the record, and that I'll be admitting these into the record, and they'll be sent to the city council members. We have Jennifer Coe, W. David Myling, Tim Miklos, Kelvin Collimore, Karen Edwards, and Yolanda Francisco Nez. Those are the comments that came in before 5 o'clock of this meeting, and we'll admit their comments. We appreciate their comments. They're admitted into the record, and the council will receive copies of this information. So that is the process. We've admitted that information, the written comments, into the record, and now we can move forward to the public comments that we can admit through the webinar process, Mayor.
And before we do that, just want to remind both our panelists or council, as well as those attending the webinar, that normally when you come to the city council, you'll sign a speaker comment card. And I've always been impressed that on the bottom of the card, it emphasizes the importance of decorum and order in our process. It's our intent to allow everyone to have a right to speak. As a council, we respect everyone's opinion, and we want to hear it. We ask that you be civil and no personal attacks, and just share your position on whatever topic. Again, we will allow 3 minutes per speaker, and this is the first time I've done it this way, so appreciate your patience as we try this. So with that being said, Paula, do you want to introduce the first person to make public comment?
Anyone wanting to express their opinion, their comment, could you please choose the raise hand button? There we go. First one will be Heather Anderson.
Heather, Heather, go ahead.
Heather, go ahead.
Mayor, she's on mute. Mayor, she's on mute.
I've asked her to unmute. Heather, you're on. Can you hear us?
Paula, why don't we go to the next person and come back to Heather?
Kimi, you are on.
Thank you. Cottonwood Heights stands with our police officers and supports our residents and community. We do not accept violence, and we strive to maintain a safe and welcoming community to all. That was the last paragraph that was said in the community newsletter. What you forgot to add to that was not accepting harassment and intimidation to the residents or business owners of our community. As a tax-paying citizen and former business owner in Cottonwood Heights, I have several questions and concerns about our police department. Is it considered normal police protocol to give officers promotions out in Wendover at the gaming tables? And if so, are you using our taxpayer dollars to pay for this trip? Let me just give you a tidbit of the harassment and intimidation that we endured over the years at the hands of this police department, at our business and our home. A handful of CHPD officers come barging into our business unannounced with their coats and black gloves on, go into the bathrooms and start kicking bathroom stall doors open, then proceeded to turn around and walk back out. An officer claimed to me, he doesn't need a reason to pull anyone over. Sometimes he does it because he's bored. Officers tailgating me and my husband anytime we would drive in the city. It got to the point where we had to install cameras in our vehicles for our own safety. Officers shining a spotlight into my then teenage daughter's window in the middle of the night, absolutely petrifying her. Officers coming into my dead-end cul-de-sac and slow rolling, then pausing at my driveway in front of our kitchen window, making their presence known. Citing my husband because of how my son's truck was parked in our driveway, but yet knocked on my neighbor's door to have him move his car because it was parked the same way, and he let my neighbor know that he was citing us for it. Officer Bartlett coming to our business stating he was delivering a message from the chief when we were doing our Utah Food Bank fundraiser, to never go over his head again to the mayor, or if he wants to park a cop car in front of our business 24/7, he'll park a car there. Is this the behavior we are paying for with our tax dollars? Is what considered to protect and serve? The systemic corruption in this police department will continue as long as the good cops are silenced. Mayor Peterson and City Council, our city and community deserve better. We are paying to protect and serve us, not to harass and intimidate. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Appreciate that. Who's next, Paula?
Next, we have Calvin Collmore. Mayor Collmore, you're on mute.
Paula, can you unmute him?
I'm asking him to unmute. He has to do it on his.
You're not the host to unmute him?
Let's see. Doesn't let me unmute him.
You there, Kelvin?
There, now can you hear me?
There you go.
Yes.
Welcome.
Some people are more technologically enabled than others, sorry.
Go ahead.
Many of the issues raised by those demanding police reform have long been policy for Cottonwood Heights. I believe statistics will show that CHPD has a much higher diversity population than the citizenry of Cottonwood Heights. At one point, we boasted 50% minority members of our police force until the hostilities towards the police began a few years ago. Now it is down to 30%. The hostilities I referred to are those fostered by Councilwoman Tally Bruce. Her efforts to undermine CHPD, attack our police chief, and create a hostile environment has been most unfortunate. It has been her mission since being elected to rid the city of Chief Russo, and if possible, the entire police department. Councilwoman Bruce has—
Mayor Collmore, we really emphasized at the beginning of this that we weren't going to make personal attacks. Did we not, Mayor Peterson?
I believe I have a right to say what I'm saying. So, Councilwoman Bruce, if you'll let me finish, and please don't count that time against me.
Okay, go ahead. I mean, it's the same thing on the first one, which is attacking. So again, we appreciate everyone's decorum and civility, but go ahead.
Councilwoman Bruce has even gone so far as to make a veiled attempt to get Chief Russo's wife fired from her position as a dental hygienist by telling the dentist Chief Russo's wife was employed by that she felt unsafe coming into his office. Her actions have resulted in a lawsuit being filed against the city and her by the chief. I resent the fact that my tax dollars are going to be used to defend a lawsuit that is the product of Councilwoman Bruce's personal agenda. She feigns support for the police, but you cannot find a single CHPD member who believes that to be true. It is a soundbite she utilizes to deflect criticism and give cover to her narrative. City Council to recognize her misbehavior and settle the suit with Chief Russo to minimize the fiscal impact on the city and to send a message that her behavior needs to stop. The City Council majority has made it clear they support the chief and the police department. Continued efforts by Councilman Bruce are nothing more than furthering of her personal agenda at the expense of tax dollars, employee morale, and the derailing of more important city business. I know firsthand the importance of having our own police department. Statistically, we have one of the best in the state. They deserve our support. There are so many stories of good deeds by our police. I remember when a particular citizen committed suicide, the police were called, worked into the night at the home so the family did not have to deal with the trauma of cleaning up the scene. On another occasion, a youth was missed. Police had a lead and hiked into the canyon only to find the young man had unfortunately hung himself. Their efforts went above the expected and saved the family the trauma of finding their son in that condition. On another occasion, they bought bikes for kids whose bikes got stolen. The litany of good deeds by our police is long and storied. Is there room for improvement? Of course. CHPD is better today than they were 5 years ago, and they will be better in 5 years than they are today. I believe them to be receptive to constructive input and willing to consider appropriate reforms. Ironically, most of the demands departments across the country have been policy at CHPD for years. We count on our police, we trust them, we support them, and we hope you will too.
All right, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate those comments. And I'm going to reemphasize again, the first two speakers have both referred to individuals in their comments, and I would strongly encourage those who are making public comments to not make personal attacks on individuals, if it's our police officers or our council members. I was very patient on the first two because it's both sides, but going forward, I would ask people not to attack individuals and keep to the message of your presentation. Paula, who's next?
Tiffany James is next.
Tiffany?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor and City Council members and Police Chief Russo and other staff for taking our family's comments tonight. We appreciate your guys' willingness to be able to discuss reform of CHPD policies. And to be clear, we are not anti-police. We raise our children to be respectful. And it's only after our experiences and hearing the experiences of others that we recognized we were one of many. And unfortunately, one of a horrible select few whose children were killed by a police officer in an unavoidable shooting. So we're happy that you guys are here to talk about policy reform, but we're really concerned that there's no mention in the process or in this recent newsletter for this month about CHPD performance, accountability, or responsibility when officers do not follow policies. Being accountable and responsible and having performance evaluations is critical in order to create change and ensure that you do have officers and leadership that are holding the rule of law. What we have heard repeatedly when we've tried to engage with city leaders, including yourself, Mayor, and the city manager, but not from all of the council members, is that the emphasis isn't on accountability or performance or trying to improve, as former mayor mentioned, but it's more about protecting liability and justifying officer actions instead of transparent investigations. These are the types of things that we think, in our opinion, need to be looked at hard by the city leaders sitting before us today. In the July newsletter, it says very specifically that an officer should never employ unnecessary force or violence, and force should only be used with the greatest restraint and only after discussion, negotiation, persuasion have been found to be ineffective or inappropriate. We agree that a well-trained officer can do this, But that was not the case with our son's situation. We did not have a well-trained officer, despite what his Cottonwood Heights Police Department Facebook page said. He had a taser available. He did not warn our son. He didn't even engage with our son. Our son was running away, and he was shot in the back. What that officer is not facing him, there was no belligerent behavior, not brandishing a weapon. What that officer displayed was not training, was not rational, cool, calculated de-escalation tactics, was not looking for alternative methods. He pulled up, shot into a neighborhood at a teenager running away, not sure of the situation. And what that indicates to us is that that officer was responding from fear. Because well-trained officers and military men, which my family has a long history of, officers who are well-trained are able to take and assess a situation before responding.
Hey, Tiffany,
They don't respond through violence.
Tiffany, you're over 3 minutes. You'll need to wrap up to be fair with everyone. Thank you.
3 minutes? Thank you.
No, you can, any final comment?
Yes, final comment. It's for this reason that we believe mandatory cameras to be able to assess performance, a mandatory camera policy, as well as if that officer is not wearing his camera, it's a automatic termination. And there should be accountability standards that are enforced in any type of lethal situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. Appreciate those comments, and conceptually agree with most everything you've said. So we'll continue to work at it. Thank you. Paula, who's next?
Mayor, I'm going to try to bring Heather Anderson in again.
Okay. Welcome back, Heather. There you are. Oh, you're muted. Oh.
Am I okay now?
There, you're good. Go.
Hey, I did it. Okay, thank you for your patience. I apologize. As a resident of our city for the last 23 years, I've had multiple interactions with our officers. This year I worked with Brighton High School's resource officer, Harris, when a young man told my daughter he planned to hurt himself because she wouldn't date him. She was 14, he was 15. The officer was able to collaborate with Sandy PD to find young man and talk with his parents. They made sure he was safe and his harassment towards my daughter stopped. At Butler Middle School, Officer Potter was invaluable all 3 years. Last year, or the year before last, my daughter reported a student dealing drugs in her classroom at her table that was assigned. The middle school administration was stupid enough to call both the dealer and my daughter to the office together. The lack of discretion by the school administration caused our daughter to be questioned and harassed by the dealer and the students who were buying the drugs. For her safety, we had to remove her from classes for a week. When she returned, Officer Potter helped her deal with the bullying and helped her feel safe at school. The year before that, our daughter's gym locker was broken into and her phone case was stolen. Officer Potter was able to catch the thief, return our daughter's property, along with many other students' stolen property, including phones. We also had a situation where a powdered substance was found all over our kids' bus. The students were taken back to the school while the police investigated what the substance was, helped the EMTs monitor the kids, and notified parents. That same week, we had multiple threats of school shootings at Butler and at Brighton. Extra officers were visible at both schools for additional safety and helped all the kids feel safe. The only reason I allowed my kids to return to school was the knowledge that trained officers were in my kids' schools, that SWAT officers were on standby ready to respond. I am grateful that they have the proper equipment for the many different situations they face. To think that we shouldn't consider and prepare for the worst possible situation is lazy and irresponsible. Thank you so much for making sure no matter what the need, our officers are trained, have the proper equipment to protect our communities and our schools. I have had the need to call 911 many times outside of a school environment. Our group of 30 teens were in the backyard of a neighbor's empty house listed for sale, having multiple fights for money. A neighbor's home was broken into and a gun was stolen. The police were able to recover it. A woman high on drugs was suicidal in Anzac Park. An out-of-town neighbor whose granddaughter's old boyfriend slashed her new boyfriend's tires and beat him up. A frail grandfather whose imposing grandson was dealing drugs outside of his bedroom window. A neighbor who was being stalked by her old boyfriend was caught on our security system. A woman who was high and drunk showed up on my porch at 1 a.m., paranoid, lost, and in distress. a new neighbor who refused to chain their aggressive dog when they weren't present to control it. Thank you so much, Officer Lovato, for helping us with that. Just a few weeks ago, a neighbor whose loud verbal argument turned physical and broke his foot. I've also called when my garage door was open in the middle of the night when my husband was at work late and was home terrified with 2 small children. They were so kind to come over and make sure we were all safe. They also came when my grandmother had a heart attack. She was revived but passed away. These are all urgent calls I've made to our police department in the last 23 years. Thank you so much, Cottonwood Heights Police Department. You most certainly have solved many problems for us, and we appreciate you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Council.
Thank you, Heather. Appreciate the comments. Paula, who's next?
Aaron James.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Go ahead, Aaron.
Let me get my volume adjusted here. I'd like to thank the council members, distinguished mayor, chief, and all the members of Cottonwood Heights city staff. Just gonna let everybody know that my son would be here today to celebrate his 23rd birthday. Had these policies been followed, but we're not. We're sitting at home with one less. And I, like my wife who spoke earlier, want to address a few things in the Cottonwood Heights newsletter that was sent out. I will certainly echo her sentiments. This conversation is long overdue. We started this with the city manager and mayor 2 years ago, which fell seemingly on deaf ears. But here we are 24 months later, equally as strong, perhaps just as much. The quote out of the article, the suffering, the police office won't engage in cruel and degrading or inhumane treatment of any person. Sadly enough, after Zane passed away, the CHPD Facebook page was full of all sorts of nasty, bully-like, unsubstantiated reports of my son. That doesn't follow policy at all. The Facebook page, the social media police, and the chief and its officers being able to respond in social media should be done away with. Also, extensive documentation reporting is required whenever the use of force occurs to assure that it's necessary and appropriate. There's been several circumstances we've had with CHPD where it seems like all of their necessary documentation is simply corroboration of the officers, not taking into account any other eyewitnesses or testimony available to them. And my last point is camera use. Tiffany brought it up also. Our camera use policy that's in place right now with Cottonwood Heights, it's a curtain. There's nothing mandatory in it. The second or third paragraph says the CHPD, may issue an officer a camera, not shall or will. There's also no disciplinary action. I get the feeling, council members, mayor, chief, that had those cameras been on, I suspect that they were on, but had the video footage been prepared and presented, that we'd have a very different story today. Number one, you would have officers that be accountable. Having officers that are accountable on the streets is vastly important to protecting this city, creating community, not out solving the problem, being mentors, being good policemen, not out playing Wild West in the neighborhood streets. I guess in closing, I guess that was well timed. In closing, perhaps one day the footage will reveal itself, but until that time, we're just going to have to sit and hope that something will happen different. And I hope these policies come to fruition, Mayor. I hope you guys make them happen. They're long overdue. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate those comments. Thank you. Paula, who do you have next?
So next we have Mr. Edward Schwartz.
Can you hear me?
Welcome, Ed. Go right ahead.
Good. Well, thank you. What I want to address this evening is something very serious, and it seems to be becoming pervasive throughout the governance of the city of Cottonwood Heights. There is a distinct lack of transparency in the delivery of extremely important services and documents and hearings that the public should and must be participatory in. For instance, let's go back several years with the building of our beautiful city hall. There were no public hearings. That was done in the city council, and it was decided at that point to go ahead with the building of the city hall. And we're paying a tremendous amount of debt during some very tough financial times right now. And I do want to commend the business manager of our city for the way it's being handled. Number two, the Bonneville Shoreline Wasatch Master Plan. There has been one public hearing, and we're talking about millions of dollars of development going on. I want to ask the council, why? What is being hidden here? What backroom deals have you decided to do? That is what has gone on in the past, at least from the perception of the public. Some of the public, not all the public, obviously. But I just feel that this lack of transparency is a hindrance in the proper governance of our city. Most recently, with the rehiring and the enactment of the new contract with Chief Russo. I'm not saying if he should have or not should have been hired, but there should have been a distinct review of his performance over the past 6 months when we had that time period to do it. That was rushed and that was political. Let's not deny that, ladies and gentlemen. It was political and it was done to save the chief. That's why it was done. And it's very disturbing for at least me. I've been living here 15 years and I've seen the city erode in its delivery of transparency. Mr. Mayor, you are trying to do it, but we can do much better, and you can open up public forums on the new development with the Wasatch Boulevard Master Plan and the Bonneville Shoreline, so the public truly has a say in what is going on, not behind closed doors. That has been the process of this city for many years. I was appalled also, and this was not on my speaking point, but I was appalled to hear former Mayor Cullimore come on and attack one of our esteemed council members. That should have been stopped at the outset. I'm sorry. As a citizen of this great city, I'm appalled that a former mayor can come on and feel that he has the right to attack a council member. It's not the way our government operates. And I realize that there's been a lot of issues with our police department and things of that, but that should have been cut off immediately, regardless of who was speaking. And I think the Dalai Lama put it most succinctly and phrased it very well. A lack of transparency results in distrust, a deep sense of insecurity. Thank you for your time, and I hope you take these comments seriously and decide to open up the comments on the Bonneville Shoreline Trail with the Wasatch Master Plan that was developed and signed off over a year ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Appreciate those comments, and we do take them all seriously. Paula, who's next?
Raven James.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
We hear you, Raven. Go ahead.
Hi. I want to start off by saying that I agree with Ed Schwartz in regards to his echoing the sentiments that another mayor should not be allowed to reiterate the abuse going on. It just kind of proves in point what is happening right now. I want to start off by saying, as has been said by both my parents, my youngest brother Zane would be here today to celebrate his 23rd birthday if an officer did not choose to become his judge, jury, and executioner in a moment of unjustified and irrational fear. He was a member of CHPD's force, a force that claims that its officers are trained to strive to exhaust all alternatives before shooting and to a warning whenever possible if shooting becomes necessary. With that being said, I do not see any justification that would apply to the violent end my youngest brother faced. The officer should have been able to react rapidly.
Raven, can you speak into the microphone of the device you're using? We can't hardly hear you.
Yeah, is that a little better?
Much better.
That's so much better.
Can you start, Raven? This is Councilmember Michael. Would you mind starting from the beginning?
Yeah, I certainly can. I want to start by saying that our family agrees with Ed Schwartz, as his sentiments echo what we are facing today with harassment. By allowing another mayor to go forward and make such a bold statement really echoes what's going on, and against Tally Bruce. Okay, so as has been said by both my parents, my youngest brother Zane would be here today to celebrate his birthday for his 23rd birthday. If an officer did not choose to become his judge, jury, and executioner in a moment of unjustified and irrational fear. He was a member of CHPD's force, a force that claims that its officers are trained to strive to exhaust all alternatives before shooting and to deliver prior warning whenever possible if shooting becomes necessary. With this being said, I do not see any justification that would apply to the violent end my youngest brother faced. The officers should have been able to act rationally because Zane was running away with no displays of aggression or belligerent behavior and no weapon in his hand. Instead, he acted in a fear-based response, leading to the death of my youngest brother. This should never have happened, as officers of the law should be trained to use de-escalation and alternative methods rather than lethal force. Cottonwood Heights Police policies require this training. Why? Because training is the key to being able to act rationally in a time of crisis. Officers should be able to rely on pattern recognition and hours of training to avoid situations like the one that ended my brother's life so carelessly. In allowing our officers to act independently of their training and outside of their directive as peacekeepers, we are risking the safety of all residents. This is why we are asking for mandatory camera policy to monitor and evaluate officer behavior. And if officers use deadly force, they are required to be held accountable by leadership rather than justified through remaining silent. When non-lethal rest alternatives are available and not used, we ask for immediate termination. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Raven. Appreciate you coming on. Paula, who's next? Paula, who's next?
Sorry, Mayor, I forgot to unmute. Jennifer White.
Welcome, Jennifer. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you. You guys can hear me? You guys can. Got the echo, so you can?
Yep.
Thank you for allowing for this, everybody involved. I think more and more when we can talk like this and have civil conversation instead of yelling back and forth at each other, that's when we see change hopefully really happen. So I really appreciate this opportunity. The main thing, I didn't have anything scripted or ready. Police need to be trained how to de-escalate situations. That needs to be, I don't know how the training is happening in Cottonwood Heights, but it is not that. I know that there was a laundry list of good things that we heard that the police help with, and I agree that there's a lot of great things that the police help with. I can give you a laundry list of times that the Cottonwood Heights Police Department has not at all been the ones that have tried to de-escalate a situation. One of the main ones I will talk about quickly is my son, who was wrongly accused of, he was pulled over and wrongly accused of assaulting a police officer and resisting arrest. He vehemently denied that. I believed him. We got a lawyer. We went to court. It took about 1.5 years. Half of that time was battling to actually obtain that police footage. They kept putting us off, putting us off, putting us off. We finally got the police footage, and I need to say how incredibly hard it was to watch my son in handcuffs, speaking respectfully to police officers, getting slammed on the hood of a police car. The conversation was absolutely fueled by the police trying to antagonize my son. It was on the video. It was obvious. They actually ended up dropping the charges because the video was so blatantly, I mean, that's why they dropped the charges, is because police cameras were running. That's what they need to be doing, so that when a police officer is out there not doing the right thing, they can be held accountable. That's all we're asking for. We're asking for the ones not making the right decisions, the ones going outside of their boundaries, outside of their lines, to be held accountable, and police cameras will help that. They're incredibly important for every police officer to be running at all times. I understand getting frustrated. I understand getting angry. But when you have been placed in a position as a police officer and you hold a weapon and you hold this title, you are held higher standards. You're not supposed to lose your temper. You're not supposed to bite back. You're supposed to be the adults and help de-escalate every situation. And cameras can help everybody be held more accountable. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate those comments.
Mayor, I don't have anyone else with their hands up. Oh, wait. I have Debbie Mackintosh.
Debbie, welcome, Debbie. Appreciate you coming on with us.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council, Chief Russo, and Officer Pilgrim. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. I have a petition here from 173 of our Cottonwood Heights citizens that I would like to share with you. Number one, racism in any form from or towards any people is morally reprehensible. Two, peaceful protests against racism are constitutional and morally good. The majority of recent violence during protests in America has not been in support of points 1 and 2, but rather by those who would exploit the peaceful protests and the true need to address racism in our nation, to instead perform general mayhem and theft and/or to further their self-declared anti-American agendas. 4, part of those anti-American agendas have included unsubstantiated, unscientific, and unreasonable calls to defund the police. 5, statistics prove local law enforcement is an effective way to reduce crime, fight human trafficking, keep our neighborhoods safe, and aid individuals and families of all races and economic levels who find themselves in need. 6, in cities and communities across the country where local police departments have been recently defunded, dismantled, or told to stand down against instances of violence, lawlessness has naturally ensued and crime has risen substantially in an impressively short period of time. 7, the members of Cottonwood Heights Police Department have shown themselves to be professional, disciplined, well-trained, and service-oriented with incredibly few exceptions. 8, as a city council, you have stated you want to keep the police fully and completely funded. We, the undersigned citizens of Cottonwood Heights, Utah, do hereby, 1, commend and express gratitude to the members of Cottonwood Heights Police Department for their exemplary service. 2, call upon our mayor, city manager, city council, and all city offices to work to keep the Cottonwood Heights Police Department fully and completely funded per your statement. 3, call upon our mayor, city manager, city council, and all city offices to support and additionally fund access to and continuous improvement of training for our police officers. And 4, request any further discussion of defunding or reallocation of funds away from our police department will be dismissed as previously discussed and already approved in City Council, so we can all move forward with other important city business. Signed, 173 citizens of Cottonwood Heights. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Appreciate your efforts in sharing that information. Paula, who do you have next?
Sir, I currently don't have anyone else with their hands raised to speak.
So all those that are online, if there's anyone who's not spoken who would like to take their 3 minutes, please push the button to raise a hand and we'll call on you.
Paul, I just got a text from someone that indicates they were bumped from the screen when they tried to raise their hand.
I didn't bump anyone. They might have gotten disconnected. What's the name?
It's Matthew Carlson.
He was here a minute ago, but he never raised his hand to my knowledge.
He just indicated he tried to and it bumped him out.
Well, we apologize to that individual, and again, work through a couple glitches, but I appreciate everybody's time to Paul, if you'll mute yours. Anyway, I appreciate everyone's time to mail in written comments, and for those who took the time to learn how to access the webinar and to take the time to share their thoughts. These are difficult times. I'm always disappointed when the conversation becomes personal, but I understand the passion that people feel for the issues they're talking about on both sides of the aisle. So we'll continue to work on that and continue what we've begun, which is a discussion of the issues as we spent in our work session this evening, and we'll continue those in our next meeting. Any final comments from the council before we move to our action items?
Yep, real quick, Mayor. It's a really persistent message that I keep hearing, a veiled accusation that I am promoting the idea of defunding the police. That is a phrase that I've actually never uttered, defund the police. I've never stated it. It wasn't part of our rally. It hasn't been part of the conversation, but it's certainly a fear-mongering technique that's continuing to perpetuate, clearly based on Debbie Mackintosh's signed petition, as well as the countless other emails that were read 2 weeks ago. And so I don't know who is promoting or advancing those fear-mongering techniques, and it really just damages our discourse when lies are perpetuated.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think our police officers will appreciate hearing that that's not the focus of our discussion either. So,
no, I would just echo, as I said before, a lot of that has to do with the perception of what occurred, and you need to deal with the perception of what people did. I believe you that you may never have said that, but I certainly do not feel that there's malice in their intent. That is what they perceived, and that is what we have to deal with sometimes as elected officials. We do need to have good discourse going through. I appreciated the discussion earlier, but yeah, we should keep it as civil as we can.
I might like just to add, Councilmember Michael, we've never as a council even uttered those words. We haven't heard each other utter those words. So I think we should be supportive of Tally and not saying defund the police as well, Councilmember Bracken, because I think that is important for our police to hear, is to support her when people make accusations of things she hasn't said, because sometimes words matter.
Yeah, I think sometimes what we're hearing is that that's part of the national discussion. It kind of came and went. And when I attended the rally downtown Salt Lake, I know that was part of the discussion, and sometimes it's all connected. But I appreciate the council's position that though we're talking about efficiency, we're talking about policy, we're talking about training and a myriad of other issues, but even in our previous meeting today, defunding was not a discussion. So that's a perception we'll try and dispel as we move forward. So we appreciate that clarification. Any other comments before we move on?
Mayor, I think you're right. I think when we brought a lot of the people from Salt Lake and some of the signs and different things that they brought, that was part of the message that was given, is to attack our officers. And I think that was my statement, in that I was offended that that was brought to Cottonwood Heights. I know people in Cottonwood Heights have some issues with our officers, but I think what was brought was a national and a Salt Lake City directive to really attack our police officers, and whether it was defund or reallocate, I think that was a message that was very clear. And I think the clarity of the people that were at excuse me, I'm speaking right now.
Sorry, Council.
But I just think that the people, and Natalie said she was threatened by the people that were there supporting our officers. I find that hard to believe. For the people that were there were extremely civil. Many of them were older, and they were very respectful. And I just think that needs to be clarified, that it was never a threatening on the side of the pro-police.
I would challenge that, Councilmember Peterson. There were vehicles that were racing up and down the street, waving flags, shouting. Our police officers were speeding up and down the streets, flashing their lights off and on. We had police officers walking on the roof of the City Hall building, pacing back and forth like target shooter, or I forget what you call them. But it was very intimidating, and the hooting and the hollering, it was disturbing. And I gather that there may have been one or two posters that migrated in from Salt Lake City and brought a discussion that wasn't localized to our own. But I would challenge anyone to listen to the speeches that were given. They were articulate, they were historical in context, they were heartfelt, they were local, they were citizens of our city that have not been listened to, have not been heard. And all of those are available on my council Facebook page. I would challenge anyone and everyone to go and listen to the speeches that were actually given. They were fantastic.
Well, thank you, everyone. Again, I attended both rallies, and I didn't see our police officers around driving fast down the street. I witnessed that. I have to disagree with that personally, but
it's in the video. So if you go back and watch, you'll see it.
I stood right there. I thought the education of a couple of the speakers was valid. I thought one of them was kind of off the wall, the defense attorney personally, but again, it's all valuable information. Everyone has a perspective. Our job as a council, why we're elected, is to sift through all that information and to make appropriate decision of how we can best serve our constituents going forward. So I appreciate you as a group, going through the process. We'll continue it as we move forward. And I feel confident, because of the effort, that it'll all be better in the long run. So appreciate that effort of everyone just being patient and working through it. That's why, against Tim's concerns, probably we'll even have it on our next meeting a little bit, to keep the conversation going, and so that it's not just being activity busy, but we actually have a product at the end that we can say we made a difference. So Robbie and Dan Bartlett, thanks for your effort on the presentation. We appreciate the people who've fought hard to get online with us today and give their comments personally. I don't want to discredit any of those feelings that were shared, because that's how they feel, and we'll move forward with that.
Well,
any further comments? Robbie, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate that. And I'm here. If they want to take shots at me, they can, but I do resent the implication that our guys were racing up and down the street. They drove down the street, they turned their lights on, they're saying hi, they're integrating with the community, and the characterization that the guys on the roof are like snipers has no place here. You can't come on and ask us to be respectful and civil and then take a cheap shot like that. Do you understand what you said? You wanna
They
see
were
if
very-
there is?
It was an
Okay.
intimidating act. It was an intimidating act.
Okay,
I
well,
would
okay,
disagree with that.
yeah, I was there and I disagree with that, but I think that's getting off the subject. You know, we've agreed that we're going to talk about some policies and going forward with training and a variety of other topics that, you know, I've got, again, half dozen more questions we'll talk about, but I'm going to move on with the agenda now. We have 2 action items. The first one is consider as a resolution 2020-34, approving entry into an interlocal funding agreement with the Salt Lake County. It's $500,000 that goes towards purchasing 2 different parcels totaling just over 26 acres on just off Wasatch Boulevard. This will go to an overall funding effort of trying to obtain $3 million to purchase that property to be eventually a trailhead or just maintaining open space. Tim, any further comments on that resolution?
Well, just one. It's an interlocal agreement between Salt Lake County and it's for the 500,000, and the land has to be acquired by December 1st, 2020. We're recommending approval. Excited to receive these funds from the county.
I move that we approve 2020-34.
It's been motion to approve by Councilmember Bruce. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Michael. Any further discussion on that topic? Hearing none, I'd call for the vote. Councilmember Bracken.
Yes.
Councilmember Bruce.
Yes.
Councilmember Michael.
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
And I will vote yes. The last item of business is consideration of a resolution 2020-35 approving appointments of 2 individuals to our Parks, Trails, and Open Space Committee. That's Mr. Chris Owens and Paula McFarland. Mike or Tim, do you want to introduce that a little bit?
Yeah, I'll address that. Chris Owens lives in Council District 2. Paula McFarland lives in Council District 3. Mike Johnson and I had the opportunity to meet with them via Zoom, talked with them about serving on this committee. They expressed desire to be a part of it. Their background, they've had volunteer efforts related to trails. They've also, Paula McFarland served on committees and understands the role of advisory committees. We feel very good about having these 2 appointed. So I'm recommending that you confirm this appointment and allow them to serve on the committee.
Any question about this resolution? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion for approval.
Move that we approve resolution 2020-35.
It's been moved by Councilmember Bracken. Do I have a second?
I'll second that. Sorry.
You take it.
Okay. Okay, we'll give it to Councilmember Peterson. Tally Bruce was right along with that. Any further discussion on those appointments? I call for the vote. Councilmember Michael.
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
Councilmember Bracken.
Yes.
Councilmember Bruce.
Yes.
And I will vote yes. The last item is our consent calendar for approval of City Council work session minutes of June 16th, 2020. Any discussion on that item?
No, just to confirm, Paula, we got those other paragraphs that were misattributed to the mayor for me removed so that it's correct now.
That's correct.
Thank you for reading through those, Scott, and looking at that. Appreciate it.
It confused me because I never remembered you saying half that stuff I thought I had, but I'll move that we approve the consent calendar.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Bracken. Do I have a second?
Second.
Oh, sorry. Right there.
The second by Council Bruce. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? None opposed. It's unanimous. That's all the business we have tonight, and I think we have nothing left that we'll go back to in our work session, and we'll move a couple of things forward to our next meeting. Therefore, I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move that we adjourn our meetings.
You have a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Tally Bruce, moved by Scott Bracken. Before I call for the vote, any suggestions regarding next meeting's agenda based upon our discussions, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll make sure that we entertain those. All in favor of the adjournment, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Be safe and good night.